All right, welcome to the Jackass Podcast. My name is Evan Lindsay, and this is a new thing for me. I called it the Jackass Podcast, and you will figure out why. So it's gonna be a kind of a just me thing, and we're gonna talk about different subjects every week. I just wanted to start something, try something new, see how it's gonna go. So the Jackass Podcast is just my opinion. I will bring facts into it. I'll bring why I think what I'm saying is true. And we're going to talk a few minutes on like 5 subjects a week. So this could be a 30-minute podcast. It could be like an hour-long podcast. First of all, I'm going to introduce myself and tell you where I'm coming from and why we're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about education. We're talking about sports. We're talking about entertainment. And we're also going to talk a little bit of wrestling. Just because those are all things that I love. And some things that I hate. So I'm not going to try and spread a lot of hate on it. But I am going to explain why I don't like some stuff. So the goal of my podcast is just to do 5 to 10 minutes on each of those topics. But first off, I'm gonna give you my background so you know who I am, and we'll probably go over this. This will be a once a week thing. It's just me getting stuff off my chest, and I'm gonna try and enjoy it. All right. So my name's Evan Lindsay. I am from San Antonio, Texas. I was born a military brat. I grew up in a military family. San Antonio, military city, USA. I did all my schooling here in town, from elementary on to college. I'm a graduate with a bachelor's at the University of Texas, or Texas A&M University, San Antonio. I was one of the first classes there. I have a bachelor's of science in kinesiology. With that, I have a lot of thoughts on education because I wanted to be a coach. And in Texas, in order to be a coach, you have to be a teacher. So that's the route I went. I am currently at a middle school in Northside, or in the largest district in San Antonio. I'm at Title I middle school. I'm a special education teacher. And this past year, I did the behavior class. I've been a teacher for 7 years. And I have done co-teaching. It's pretty much just been middle school. That is the class I like. If you're wondering, well, why wouldn't you do elementary? I'd only do one spot in elementary, and that's actually be in the gym, in the PE. That may be when I'm about to retire. That's some of the most fun I've had. My political stance, you're going to find out, it's kind of middle of the road, but leaning more right or Republican than it was in years past. I am a father of 2 girls. I've been with my wife for a total of the past 18 years. I got this coming next school year. There'll be a senior and junior in the oldest high school in the district that I work for. And I have 2 daughters. So I'm the father of a daughter. One's a band kid. One's an orchestra kid. So we're just going to see how this goes. So my goal with this podcast is to make whatever I'm talking about be about 5 minutes minimum to about 15 minutes maximum. I don't think that you need to go on and on about a subject for an hour. I'm going to try and make my podcast. My goal is about an hour of me just talking. And it'll just be on whatever the week's topics are. Whatever's popular in the news or since it's my first go around, I might be all over the place for the first half of the year. So just hold on. And when you get a shot, if you have comments or if you have questions, or if you just say, well, I don't like your voice, that's fine too. You're going to find out when I say this is the Jackass Podcast. I am the Jackass. So, the first topic we're going to talk about is politics. And the political landscape to me has changed way too much. We've become way too emotional. Especially in the past 12 years while Trump's been around office. To be honest, I've come around to liking Donald Trump. I didn't at first. I didn't like the thought of him being president. I didn't like his persona. I just didn't like what I saw. But when you get into him versus Hillary or him versus Joe Biden, to me, he was always the stronger candidate. So I began to like him. I know by this time we're talking within the first 150 days, or 100, it just went over 120 days because I'm doing this on June 1st. Talking the first 120 days of his presidency. And everybody is analyzing this like we would a football game for every play. And I don't get it. We've become a bunch of people who like watching people play checkers in politics. We love the reaction. If we don't like you, it's all emotional and we go crazy. I got friends who go crazy for Donald Trump. Like, they would be at the altar of Trump if they could be. I'm not that guy. I don't like all the emotion in politics. I know they're supposed to get on your emotional side sometimes, but we become, as a society, way too emotional in politics. So far, my view on Trump is he's treating the office like a businessman, which is what you would expect Donald Trump to do. He wasn't going to be anything but that when he got into office. Can I see when talking to people in education, I can look at, well, you're an educator, and y'all going, well, he's taking down the Department of Education. Department of Education was about funding. Didn't do anything with curriculum. He's not the one that has screwed up our system morally. And when national government gets into how we should do education in the classroom, it screws it up anyway. And I firmly believe that. I firmly believe, and we'll talk about this, that No Child Left Behind is one of the worst pieces of legislation in the history of America. I don't remember all the legislation that came out of it, but I know the fact that the way standardized testing is treated now versus how it was treated when I was a kid, and how it was treated, or how it should be treated, is gone way, way overboard. And y'all can go listen to TikToks and podcasts by teachers and tell you the truth. It's not an extreme. If you've had kids, especially in the state of Texas, where I'm at, man, we lock down the school like it's a prison for these state tests. So, now let me circle back. Here's what I think Donald Trump, and when I say we're talking politics, we're talking national, and I'll talk state politics for those who might be from Texas. And we'll go with laws that I've heard about, and because of social media, my eye has been on laws that have been more educational based. But if you want to go off on the tariffs for Donald Trump that everybody's been complaining about, it was a chess move. To me, the tariffs were a chess move. They were. He was hoping, and he got people to come back to the table, and let's talk about tariffs. Let's talk about how much we're taxing the U.S. product versus how much y'all taxing your product, and let's just make it fair. I get that. The thing with Doge, I actually like it. I've been dealing with government offices since my mom went blind and I was a teenager. I don't like dealing with bureaucracy. And as I've gotten older and been around people and hearing the hoops people gotta jump through, whether it's veterans at the VA, heck, my grandfather and my mom, who were both military personnel, who had to deal with the VA, they were jumping through hoops. Dealing with Social Security with my mom when she became disabled. Dealing with Social Security for my brother who was disabled. I think that we have too much bureaucracy in our government. And in hearing stories from my grandfather, who was a Vietnam vet, there's been too much bureaucracy since then. Because the way they handled the war back then had to go through Congress. And that's not who should be deciding the wars and how they're acting. So, my view on government is probably more Republican based. I think we should have more state and local run government have power versus federal government power. But the federal government does have a place in this. I don't think you can go through the way this country's been built and not say that the federal government has some great strength. They should be the one in charge of protecting us militarily. And we should have places like the FBI and the CIA. Those two for sure. NSA and I think Homeland Security have kind of gone overboard, especially since 9/11. I'm not going to say it's a conspiracy, but I think they expended their powers too much. I think when you get into democratic politics, the way the EPA takes over and just the regulation from the federal government screws up a lot of things. So I think today is going to be kind of an overview of what I think about things like this. So that's what we're going to continue with. If you want at any time, I will try and section this off so you know when I'm talking intro, politics, and the rest of it. But just so you know, my view on politics is midline. And I think there's things that need to be changed, and I think there's things that we don't need to change as heavily, or haven't needed to change as heavily. Now, when it comes to one of my passions, we can talk about education. And I think, and as I said a few minutes ago, I think the worst thing that's happened in education is No Child Left Behind. And this is why. First off, I'm going to say, the first thing that goes wrong with a lot of education is the minds of parents that become too overprotective with their kids and believe that their kids don't ever do anything wrong. The parents that have great relationships with the teachers, guess what, y'all, man? They know who their kid is. They see the same thing that their teacher sees. And they try and build it within a community. Now, I say this as I'm a special education teacher. So, what that means, if you don't actually know what that means, That means my job is to come up with stuff for kids that are in special ed who have been tested. And it's not just kids with ID or kids who are so low functioning that you wonder why they're in school sometimes. Those aren't the only kids we're talking about. A lot of kids that I deal with when I was a co-teacher are kids that, guess what? They're behind a few grade levels. There's something in their brain that does not connect like it should. So we have kids that have specific learning disabilities where they're just kind of a grade or two behind where they're supposed to be in reading and math specifically. And we'll go through it here, like when we talk about education, of what special educators see, because we also have to write a yearly plan for that student called an IEP, an individual education plan. And these kids, man, are some of the hardest workers that you will find when they want to do better. And then some of the laziest kids because they've given up and nobody's given them the encouragement to go do what they need to do. So, from what I have seen, special education was not what I wanted to do originally, but it's what I've ended up doing. And I do love it. I love dealing with my kids. This past year, I was running the behavior class on my campus. I would deal with the kids who would lose their cool real quick, who would be emotionally distressed real quick, and trying to calm them down and figure out what was going on with them. And I'm doing that at middle school level for all the kids are kind of like that anyway, where kids just don't know, oh, sir, what's going on, because they're changing. And with all this being said, that's the kind of educational system we have. And the way kids view education is not based on what their teachers say a lot of times. It's based on what the family says at home. So I'm hoping through me just doing this as part of my podcast, I can get people to understand how much influence they have on their kiddos and how they view education. Because I think education it was praised for a minute, and now everybody's back against it because we got this really small percentage of people who do really stupid things in education and get themselves caught. And like with most things in life, that really small percentage that messes it up for everybody else. Like, unfortunately, their teachers do stuff that they're not supposed to do. And it sucks. And it sucks because since I'm a male teacher at a middle school, I have to be very cognizant of what I do and what I say and how I say it. I also have to be cognizant of my actions, especially towards the opposite gender, and how I handle them and how I have to handle them when, say, if I had to restrain a child. So everybody knows, I say this and I've been trained since I was starting off after college. For the past 11 years, I've been trained in the proper way to restrain kids. So I get it when people say, well, you're taught to restrain. Yeah, but it's not always the most natural of things. So in this podcast, on the Jackass podcast, we're going to talk a lot about education. Talk about where I think nationally this is screwed up, where I think locally this is screwed up. By local, I mean state level and my district level. And things that I think we could really work on. I think that we'll go through laws that Texas just passed and talk about what they've talked about at a national level. Because education's a big thing. And we'll talk about what my views are on college versus trade schools and stuff like that. It'll be a fun one. Alright, now going from the two more serious topics I'm going to talk about to the stuff that I'll probably have fun talking about a little bit more, because this is the conversation that I wish I could have with friends that I don't get to see as much. So, first, I think we'll do it this way. I think I'll make it this way. Excuse me. I think I'll make it this way. In that, when we talk on this podcast, or when I talk on this podcast, we'll talk about some sports. And right now, the big story is the NBA championship, or the NBA playoffs. And as of today, it'll be the Indiana Pacers versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Excuse me. Now, I did say I'm from Texas. I'm a huge Spurs fan. I'm a huge Cowboys fan. And I'm an Aggies fan. I can go with either baseball team. And if I'm half interested in hockey, which is not a sport I ever really like, we can talk about the Dallas Stars. But my top sports are football, college football, and basketball. I've said that I went to school for coaching. We'll also probably talk where I'll talk like how I view stuff differently now as a coach versus than I did as a fan. And through this, I think we'll go through stories of mine, what I've seen kids do, and then just how the game, viewing the game has changed for me. First off, let's do a recap of how I think Dallas's offseason went. It's kind of been average for what it has been the past 7-8 years. They didn't really go get, the only big name they went and got was George Pickens, and that was after the draft and after free agency. And I actually like that pickup. I think it's going to loosen up defenses a little bit and probably open some holes for the running game. The fact that they went and got another big boy on offensive line as a first round pick, to me, is a great thing to replace someone like Zach Martin, which is going to be a tall test for anyone to do. And that they're going to have all that beef in the middle, and that probably the running back they drafted, Blue, run all over the place. And I think they picked up someone. And hopefully they keep Rico Dowdle. I don't know if that's what they're thinking. So offensively, I think give it the first quarter of the season for them to get their feet wet. And if they can make it out, because I don't know the schedule yet off the top of my head. I know they play Philly the first week. If they can just be a spoiler to Philly that first week. And that should be a good game. That's what I'm hoping. hopefully they'll be able to keep up with Philly, especially since now they have two comparable ones like Philly does. The only difference is Philly's got one that's just a physical beast in A.J. Brown. And then they have the speed of Devontae Smith. That's going to be hard for anyone to guard. Dallas also going to do a lot of good stuff this year. I haven't seen, and probably we'll get into a little bit more when we start seeing the preseason and see what their defensive set's going to look like. Are they going to run a 4-man front or a 3-man front? Are they going to be the cover 2 base that they've been doing with some man coverage? Or like, we can get into all that stuff. I kind of want to wait and see. Do I think they're going to win the division? I hope they do. I hope Philly has a little bit of a hangover because they've been going deep in the playoffs for a little while. But Philly's a hell of a coach team and got a great organization to it. So I think it'll be hard for Dallas to take over from them. But I think they can do it. I think they'll beat Washington of this year. I think everybody's going to look at what Jaden Daniels did, what he did so well, and try and make it harder for him just to give him different looks. I don't think he's going to take a dramatic step back, but I think he's going to have sometimes a step back and, okay, how's he going to adjust to it? Now, as far as since I said I'm a Spurs fan, I'm looking forward to next season. I'm looking forward to the NBA draft to see what the Spurs do at number 2 and number 14. Because I think they're going to keep their picks. I don't think they're going to go get an old head like a Giannis or Kevin Durant. They've never, as an organization, they've never really been like that. They may take an old hat and just say, like the T-Mac situation or the Glenn Robinson situation, where they were kind of past their prime and trying to give them a run and use their skill set to the best of their ability. Kevin Willis situation. A Steve Kerr situation. Take these veterans and mix them in with these young players. Well, hell, what a Chris Paul situation was last year. I think they have a great young core with Wemby and with Castle. I think Vassell. I think whatever rookie they get, if they hit in the draft like they normally do at 2 or 14, I think it'll be really good to see. Like, I'm really happy. It's sad to see Greg Popovich go away as a coach because I don't think he could physically do it anymore. And watching that press conference, not have been a huge, like, Greg Popovich is one of those coaches that you're like, he shows you what a good coach is. It shows you it's not just about the X's and O's. It's about knowing the players, and just like showing them how much you view them as a person versus as an asset. He also shows, you hear stories about him being the a-hole type coach too, where he's trying to get the best out of you, where he's picking at you, where he plays some favorites, and that's fine. Like, when you're coaching, you find your favorites, you find your dudes, and you coach them up, and sometimes you coach through them to other people. So, that's a good thing. My Aggies for football, we'll wait and see what happens. Their quarterback from last year looked really good at the end of the year. As long as he's still doing really good, and I think he takes a couple steps forward, knowing he's going to be the starter, it'll be fun to watch. Y'all also probably hear me talk about the high school that I work with, And being a middle school coach in the district I'm at, we also work with the high school. So I'll be at a lot of high school games this year. And I may tell you about some dudes. And so y'all know when I say dudes, I mean those guys that you know going to jump to the college level and do something. The kid that just won the state title in Texas for the 100-yard dash, I got to watch at the district meet. And you could tell he was special. I do not remember what his name was, but he won the high school track meet. He was just different. And those are fun guys to watch. So sometimes you get to see him. I think I'll be seeing one who's just going to be different coming from the high school that I work with. He'll be a sophomore this year. We'll see how he does. It'll be really, really fun for me. Now, as far as the biggest sports news right now, I don't really follow baseball much. They're just kind of still in the first third of their season. Man, I don't follow baseball to the playoffs. I think the NBA Finals, OKC is going to get its second title since they took over the records from the Seattle Supersonics. But it'll be the first one in OKC. That team is just something different to watch. I know the Spurs gave them some fits because they're kind of, next couple of years, that's going to be a good rivalry for the Spurs, is OKC, to watch. Because they both have the giant 7-footers that can play D. Both are linky and both can shoot from deep. So it'll be fun to watch. So now, and we'll also talk some fantasy sports. I'm in probably going to be in 5 leagues this year. 4 or 5. 3 of them are dynasty leagues that my friend got me into. And one's going to be interesting because it's going to be a pirate league, where if you win, you get to take a player from the other team. That's kind of be cool. I'll probably come talk about that league. And then we have our big money league that we do, that I won a couple times. Been a little while now, but I won it a couple times. And I'll give my opinions on fantasy players. I think during the next couple weeks, I will start going looking. When we get to mid-July to August, I'll start really going looking at rosters. And we'll go through a division or 2 divisions. We'll go through an AFC and an NFC division over 4 weeks' time. And I'll give you my opinion and what I would do. And I'll give you my philosophy on fantasy, if you're interested. So since we were just talking about sports, I think I'm also going to talk about wrestling, which is probably my favorite thing to watch over my lifetime. I grew up a huge wrestling fan, and I love watching wrestling, even the current product. There have been times where I have not watched it all the time. There's about a 10-year period where I didn't really watch it that much. But right now, I've been religiously watching it. So much so that my wife has begun to hate it again. But I don't want to miss any of it. I like the direction. And let me be clear. When I say wrestling, I mean WWE wrestling. I'll watch a little bit of TNA. I never really fell in love with AEW. I might watch some clips of the guys I liked who were WWE guys. But I haven't sat back and watched a lot of AEW stuff. It just never... It's too... I don't see him telling a story as much a lot of times. So to me, the best wrestling tells a story. And I know some of y'all are going to put it in comments if you listen to this. and say stuff to me, oh, wrestling is fake. No joke. I know it's fake. I know it's staged. And I will say this, just like the movies you like to watch, it's staged. Great. It's staged. It's still fun to watch. Gives you action, gives you a storyline. And if you don't believe there's parts of wrestling that you get hooked to, then tell me why every basketball game, football game, baseball game gotta have a storyline to it. It's so it hooks you in. We gotta find that storyline. I'll say this. I will give you my top 5 wrestlers that I like watching or have liked watching. I'll give it to you in my order. I'm gonna say The Undertaker, Arn Anderson, Eddie Guerrero, The Rock, and Stone Cold were all my favorites. Those are my top 5 favorites. Not to diss anyone who's currently wrestling right now. Now, if you on my top 5 right now, like when I start watching and I sit down for current product, I'll say Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, Roman Reigns. I'm starting to really like Jey Uso. And who's my fifth? Who will I not turn the TV from? I say LA Knight. LA Knight's hooked me a little bit more than I thought he would. LA Knight's he's kind of a throwback, but I loved LA Knight. I loved watching Bray Wyatt when he was alive. When that character came out, I loved it from the get-go. To me, that was an awesome character. I didn't say John Cena, more or less just because he's kind of a part-timer. I still love watching him. And it's kind of one of the things that got me in and out of wrestling. Because I did like John Cena when he first came out. So, those are my top 5s for right now. And it'll probably change as the storylines change. That's what I actually love about wrestling. It's the storylines. Like when you get emotional. I remember the Randy Savage, Ric Flair storyline as a kid. Ultimate Warrior Hogan, Sid Vicious. I remember all the Taker storylines. The Stone Cold storyline with Vince McMahon. How can you not remember that if you're a wrestling fan? The Rock versus anybody. Rock and Chris Jericho. Rock and Mankind. Those were all really good stories. The Rock and Triple H. I used to love watching that stuff. So, we'll talk about current storylines. I think this will be a good time to start. I think I want to drop this on Sundays. So next Sunday we'll be talking about probably my thoughts on what Money in the Bank looked like. And any other sports related stuff. I do love watching WWE NXT. Also seeing those up and comers. Trick Williams is fun to watch to me. Javon Evans is fun to watch to me. Ethan Page is fun to watch. Ricky Saints, not so much. Hank and Tank are fun to watch to me. That's a good one. So I want to watch good storylines. And yeah, I do fall into it. It's a great escape for me. So if you're like, well, why are you talking about it? Because to me, it's an escape. That is a place where I just will escape to, just like I'll escape in a movie. Now, speaking of movies, we'll also talk a little bit of entertainment stuff. Entertainment for me, I like stuff with good stories. I like stuff with epic stories. I like action movies. So we'll talk about those as I see them. I have tended, I guess, at my age of 43 to go back to stuff I like a lot more than looking at new stuff. But I found new stuff that I like too. So, and I'll also go with music. Like, I'm a 90s country boy, 90s rock, classic rock. But I listen to new stuff when it comes across, especially like it comes across my YouTube music. I will listen to new stuff. So, find out also like a lot of soulful music. Like I love Teddy Swims right now. I love Jelly Roll right now. Music something that even in my class I always have music playing. So like when I'm actually teaching kids, and I'll explain what my job actually kind of is throughout this. But when I'm actually teaching, I'll shut off the music, and then when it's time to work, I'll put music on. That's the kind of stuff I like doing. And we'll talk about what I think about kind of new movies, new shows, some of the weird things Hollywood does. They've gotten weirder in the present than they ever were. That's what happened to a lot of, I think, that's how entertainment changed so much, and actually kind of go look into it. Because I think a lot of movies that we saw and were put in theaters are now just going straight to streaming services. So you kind of got to find them, those good movies or those crappy good movies. And we'll talk about some of those. Maybe I'll have a thing that I watch for the week. Like the past 2 weekends, as we finish off the school year, I went and watched all the Star Wars movies. I'm somewhat of a nerd. I love doing stuff like that. But we'll talk about different stuff. And we're just going to kind of dabble a little bit here and there. I'll make this more cohesive. Have a little bit more written down. And ideas of the week that I could go off on topic. If you have any suggestions, this is just the first one. This is the first Jackass podcast. If you don't agree with what I have to say, I'm fine with that. If you don't like me, you don't have to listen to me. But I hope that you do. Again, this is Jackass Podcast. My name is Evan Lindsay. I hope y'all have a good day, good evening, and hopefully you'll hear me around the bend. Have a good one.